But right now we are in an emergency. A full-on climate catastrophe is hitting all of us.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this edition of One Young World Together Apart series. My name is Nicolle Fagan, and I'm a One Young World ambassador from the US. I attended the summit in 2014 in Dublin, Ireland, and I was so inspired by being there that I went on to co-found the Palau Pledge in the tiny little island of Palau. This was an environmental tourism effort that asks every visitor to the country of Palau to sign an environmental pledge upon entry. And I'm so thrilled to be here with Arizona Muse, an icon in the fashion world who has become one of the industry's leading voices on sustainability and environmental regeneration. She is a driving force behind ensuring the industry can change the way that clothes are sourced, produced, and consumed, and she uses her platform as an ambassador for Greenpeace and Women for Women to advocate for real change. Thank you, Arizona, for joining us. My very first question for you is, where in the world are you at the moment?
First of all, you're amazing, Nicolle, and I admire your work so much. It's so cool to be here right now talking to you. Thank you. And I am in London. I live in London, and I'm in my home. I just returned back from a farm, however, because at the beginning of lockdown, I panicked and realized I felt really vulnerable in a city on the 8th floor where we live, and I wanted to spend lockdown however long that was going to be, because at that stage we had no idea, in nature where food is grown. So that was an incredible experience. We were there as a family with my husband and 2 kids for 7 weeks, and wow, we arrived in the dead of winter. It was dark and cold, and we watched everything blossom from tiny green buds to full bloom, and then the baby lambs were born and the baby calves, and it was just like, wow.
That's amazing. What an incredible experience with your kids to be able to witness that and ask all the wonderful why questions that you must have gotten from them.
Yeah, it was just, and the independence that children have when they're in nature, and the logic that I love children's brains because they are so logical. And when it comes to environmentalism, my son, who's now 11, for the last 5 years has been my major confidant, and his logic is just absolutely crucial in my own understanding of environmental issues. Because when you tell a child about the pollution of a river, and then you tell them, oh, but there are all these political reasons why it can't stop right now, it has to carry on, it takes a while to, and they're just like, what? No, you have to stop it now. And you're like, oh, okay,
yeah.
That's how we all need to think.
It's true. You can kind of see into their, that some of these barriers that we perceive are really just perceptions, that they really shouldn't be there. So I'm going to have so many questions.
Our imagination.
I'm going to have so many questions for you about, because my daughter's 2 turning 3 in July, and how you get to kind of that awakening moment with a child, where my daughter's totally clueless, but we'll save that question for a little later. All right, so first real question, with sustainability at the core of your advocacy, can you tell us how you first learned about it, thought about it, became passionate about it, and how your activism has evolved on this issue?
Yeah, so I've been a model for 10 years, and inside the industry of fashion, watching designers make their clothes, being in shows, being in fittings, you learn a lot about the inner workings of the biggest houses, the biggest fashion houses in the world, by being there at fittings at 3 a.m. with the designers and the design team, and learning how they really work. But it wasn't until 5 years into my career that I learned anything about sustainability or anything about the fashion supply chain. These things are really, and certainly then, were very opaque behind the scenes topics, and they're just surfacing now, which is fantastic. But I went on this journey from realizing I didn't know anything about materials, and I wanted to learn everything about materials. What is this made of? What is cotton really? Where does cotton come from? What inputs do you need in a farm to grow cotton? How can you grow it in a way that's actually healthy for the nature around the farm? And is it normally grown in a way that is incredibly polluting for nature on the farm, but also then runs into the waterways and connects in with the whole rest of the earth? And are we just polluting our entire planet by wearing clothes?
That's so interesting. And how I can imagine, as you trace the supply chain, how many different things are affected at each point. So that must have been an incredible journey.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. So we're starting to see meaningful action on climate change by governments. And I think that, last year's Fridays for Future movement and seeing some of this really more broad scale stuff happening was so exciting. But then, in the midst of everything, a global pandemic hits. And especially, here in the US, you start to see just movement in the wrong direction. You start to see, things happening that shouldn't be happening and maybe taking advantage of the situation. So this puts the responsibility more on us, on individuals in the private sector to step in. What sort of solutions do you think we're not exploring enough that could be brought to the surface, especially now?
I love that question. So I've found in my 5 years of learning and educating myself that I resonate most with the nature-based solutions. To me, those are the most logical, by far the least expensive, when as opposed to the really technology-based solutions of, like, for example, sucking carbon out of the air with a steel machine. I mean, the environmental cost of building that steel machine, and of course the working conditions. It's doubtful that a steel machine is going to be built, especially when it's brought to scale, is going to be built in a human-friendly way. It's highly unlikely. So why don't we look for solutions that are going to be human-friendly and earth-friendly at the same time? Because I think those two problems are so intertwined and I didn't used to think this. I used to think environmentalism and human working conditions and fair pay were two very different issues. And I was going to focus on the environmental ones because there were already so many groups focusing on that side of the story. And I thought the environment is the underdog. I cannot stress enough, through my learning, the biggest realization I've had is that they are the same thing. Diversity and equality are the same thing as environmental wellness. We cannot have ill and unhealthy humans and human systems on the planet while we're trying to heal it. It just won't work.
I completely agree with you. I think you're exactly right. And I think that some of these solutions that you talk about, technology that will suck carbon out of the air, it's almost being used as like a get out of jail free card. Like
or an investment. It's all from the money side of things. It's like, is this going to be the next big investment? It's impact. It goes under the category of impact investing. And I feel like that's money talk. That's from people in offices who live in cities who don't understand nature or biodiversity or the way the earth works.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things I learned when I was living in Palau was coming from a city, moving to a place that is so close and connected to nature, there is a connection that is lost. And being able to be so close to the ocean, really see the change that's happening in that environment was very awakening because, you see how people's lives are truly built on nature there and how far away we've gotten from that. So figuring out a way to bridge that is really one of my passions.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It makes you feel good too, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Feel better when we're bridging that gap between ourselves and nature and broadening our understanding. I mean, I find this topic has opened my mind in such an extraordinary way. I feel better and healthier and more comfortable. That's something that surprises me because I thought, and I think it's common misunderstanding that when you become more sustainable, you're going to be denying yourself normal comforts in life. And it's just not true. My life is so much more comfortable now that I consume less.
Yep, and I would agree with that. And that was a learning again from Palau, where you just don't have access to so much. You learn to live slightly different way, but it's no less fulfilling. And in many ways, there's research now that shows that simply taking a walk in the woods has the effect of reducing anxiety. And that is something that, if you can find access, and access is another big issue, but if you have access to nature and you can get out, that can have immediate effects on your health.
And I found, as someone who lives on the 8th floor in one of the biggest cities in the world, that I don't have great access to nature. And I found that a little trick and tip for that is find a little plant. It doesn't matter how small nature is. If you spend 45 seconds examining that plant, looking at the underneath of its leaves, looking at how does it grow, is nature. And you are actually getting the benefits of nature just by doing that. So I do it on any walk I take, which is every day I walk somewhere because I mostly use foot transport as a pedestrian. There's moss everywhere in London, quite a lush and green climate. So I see on a wall, there's a little moss growing there. I cannot tell you how much my memories of the last kind of 6 to 9 months, I only just started doing this about 9 months ago. My last 9 months are filled with memories of moss observations. It's so weird. I'm like, how does this equate? How does that make sense? But it's amazing. It's transforming like the memory landscape in my mind, just doing this little tiny exercise.
And probably, helping you realize where some of this inspiration for fashion and for art and for this comes from is really inspired so much by nature, which is just right there outside for all of us to enjoy for free. Climate justice is becoming more and more globalized. It's becoming more and more understood. What does this mean for you, especially in the context, I would think, in the context of a global fashion industry and a global supply chain?
I hope, this is wishful thinking, but I think we all need to be wishful at this point. The time for incremental small change is over. Had we had that approach 45 years ago, that would have been an appropriate and suitable approach at that stage. But right now we are in an emergency. A full-on climate catastrophe is hitting all of us, and we need to act really quickly. And so I think wishful thinking, this is the time for it now. So I'm going to do some of it now with you. I wish that the industry would shorten its supply chain, would work with fewer suppliers so that it had the time to actually value each human along its supply chain, which you can't do if you have potentially thousands of humans, faceless, nameless humans along your supply chain. I think each brand needs to really think about how they can include all the humans along their supply chain in creativity. Because right now, the designers get to be creative. They're on this end of the supply chain, but then someone down here is just carrying out their creativity, but not being able to benefit from having that creative thought process. And I think that's something we need to really redistribute, is the creativity along the supply chain.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right, where even the people who are at the end of the supply chain, it should flow both ways. And you do continue to read stories about how, fashion does borrow influence from these different places. And a lot of these places are places where the end product is manufactured. So there should be that, benefit going both ways. So I think that that's a great point. As we're looking at, some of the fashion industry's negative effects on the climate and climate change, do you think that the pandemic that we're all living through right now is a wake-up call? And, it's been posed in both ways. It said, this is a wake-up call, we should be learning from this, but then it's been posed that this is going to be a blip and we're going to go back to normal. What are your thoughts on where we go from here?
At this moment, I'm really excited because of all the stimulus packages being handed out by governments. I think this has been a moment where we have witnessed something that I wasn't sure could happen. I didn't know for sure that governments could actually come together, work swiftly, and create change. They have just proved that they can do that because they did it. For lockdown, they did it, and we watched them, and it's fresh in our minds. So now there's no excuse why they can't do that for climate change. And they're about to hand out big stimulus packages to support humans and businesses. And there is an immense opportunity to do great good or to do great wrong, depending on which hands you choose to hand those stimulus packages to. With what criteria are we we're getting, I'm watching applications go into governments for 500 million for an oil company. Mm-hmm. And it's like, whoa, imagine what 500 million could do if it were placed in the hands of individuals with environmental criteria to uphold its value in other ways other than money. I mean, it's just incredible the moment we're in now of history. So I am hoping and just wishing that it will go in the healthy direction.
Yeah, I'm on the same page there too. I think it would be interesting to see in these times, you hear a lot of people talking about how difficulty breeds innovation. That makes me excited, innovating a more sustainable lifestyle. So that's where I think, the fact that we have this movement building, then this happened, and now we're going to hopefully see some of the innovation that comes out of it. That's where my hope comes from, and I'm really excited about that. My final question is, so I'm a mom. My daughter is turning 3 in July. You have 2 children yourself. What can we do to help raise these kids to not only be prepared, but be awake and ready to take on some of these challenges that they're going to be facing? I think I go either way. I think what an interesting time for a young child to grow up, but then there is this in the back of my mind worry about what we're leaving them. So I'd love to get your perspective on that.
So I love the topic of parenting. For me, it's really a fascinating and interesting conversation. And my mom is actually a parenting coach. She wasn't when I was young, but she became a parenting coach.
I'm relieved for you.
and so I do get amazing advice from her, and I'm super lucky for that. I think the most important thing we can do as parents right now is give our children our time. They need us. And it's not going out to make money to pay for their future is not giving them your time. They need you more than they need your money for their future. They just need you. They love you more than anything in the world. And if you can return that love with time and affection and closeness and work on the relationship you are building with your children from the beginning. And by the way, it's never too late. So if you're hearing this now and going, wait, my relationship with my child sucks. We never talk. They are on their video games during dinner time. I don't know how to talk to them anymore. I mean, this is what most families feel like. So it's totally okay. There's no judgment. It's just, this is our reality. This is what video games have done and media has done to the family dynamic and the family nucleus. And it's really a tragedy and also a crisis in itself. And that's something that we're going to have to, as every society, will have to work with moving on in the future and decide, is this okay with us that we're raising our kids in a completely disconnected way to the point where they don't even really know who their parents are anymore because they don't spend time together at all.
Yeah, and even being stuck at home, we're all still being pulled in so many directions. So we're all trying to find that space where we can do our work and spend the time and balance it. And it's just a good reminder that they're not looking for anything outlandish. They're looking for you and being able to spend time with you.
And they want you to be present. And for me, it's so hard to put my phone away and play with my children. Like it's not easy because every day I'm like, oh, why is this so hard? Why can't I just stop thinking about my emails? And like, I've got some wooden blocks here. Just play with them. Just play. And it's like, why is this it's so simple, but it's tricky. We need to work on this. It's like being able to play with kids is a skill that we have to hone in on and develop. and you've got to do it though. I mean, it's the best advice I've ever received is to value the time you have with your children because eventually they'll be grown up and you'll miss them.
Yeah, exactly. She can only fit on my lap for so long. So I think about that a lot. So we are just about out of time, but there is one last question. If you could leave the One Young World community with one final action, what would that be?
If I were to leave, or I am leaving the One Young World community with the final action, just create a buzz. We all have it in us. I didn't grow up thinking I would ever become an activist, and now I identify with that word. It suits me, and that is a huge surprise to me, but it's amazing to feel like that, and I would encourage anyone to join that movement, find what you're passionate about, and become an activist about it, because we need everyone on board.
Thank you so much, Arizona. So everyone, let's please give a big thank you to Arizona for her time. And make sure to like, comment.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Make sure to like, comment, and share this session. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. We hope you enjoyed this. Take care, stay healthy, and stay safe.
You too. Thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you.